Good morning, everyone. It's Chef P. Today we're making chicken stock. So we're going to talk about the different types of stocks. The most traditional, of course, with chicken stock is making a white stock, and that basically means that we're not going to brown anything in preparation for it. So we're basically going to put all our ingredients in there. So basically, starting off with chicken bones, some fresh cold water, and some mirepoix, which is onions, celery, and carrots. And then we're going to put some herbs in there as well. So parsley, thyme, bay leaves, and we're also going to add peppercorns and some salt to sort of get that flavor going. The other way that you could make a stock is making a brown stock, and I'll demonstrate how to make a brown beef stock in the coming days. But you could also make a brown chicken stock. And so basically the differences between those are, if you make a white stock, you're basically going for more of a mild flavor. And the other side of that is that it keeps it nice and white. So if you're adding chicken stock to a sauce that you want to be sort of on the paler side, then a white stock would suit. But if you're looking for richness of flavor and looking for a deeper colored stock, then you would brown it. And the way we brown that is in the oven. We'd roast those bones, we'd roast those vegetables, and we'd get some caramelization of the sugars that are in those vegetables and add that to the stock. So a stock will always start with cold water and then slowly be brought up to the boil. Then we cut it off and we simmer it for some time. A chicken stock will require maybe an hour and a half total, and then we'd strain that off. You'd cool it in the fridge. In the next day, you would take off the little fat layer, if there is any, and you could throw that away, and then you have a fatless stock at this point. With a beef stock, though, you can keep that beef stock going for quite a while. And from my days in commercial kitchens, we always had a big stock pot on the back with beef stock, and as we'd cut and use things during the day, we would just throw all those things in there and continue getting those flavors nice and strong. And we would turn that stock into a demi-glace, which we would use for different sauces, and it just provides this really bottom-end, rich, beefy flavor. So let's take a look at our mise en place for today. So we have chicken bones, and this is from the demo that I did the other day on deboning those breasts. Our mirepoix, of course, onions, celery, and carrots. I've only washed these. I'm not even going to peel them. I have some garlic as well. The peels and everything can go in there. Peppercorns, I didn't have black. Typically I would use black peppercorns, but I had white here this morning. I've got my bay leaves here. Here's the dry thyme if you needed some. But I was really lucky today and I have some fresh thyme in my garden, and I have fresh parsley, so I'm going to be using those. Okay, so let's get on to prep. So we're going to cut our mirepoix. And that mirepoix is a basic flavoring element to any stock, anything that you're trying to add flavor to. Onions, celery, and carrots work together. In Louisiana, they have something called the Holy Trinity, and they would swap out the carrots for green peppers, and they use that as a base flavoring agent. But today we'll be using a mirepoix. I've washed my carrots, I've washed my celery, I've brushed off anything off my onion, but you'll see that I'm not going to peel it. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to cut it into rough cuts, and we actually call that a Mirepoix cut. Okay, so I'll show you that right now. I've also taken these top parts of the celery, and as I'm cooking, if I've got a stock on the stove, I can always just keep throwing stuff in, right? And it's not going to be lost on that. So I just rough cut. And I'm just looking for chunks. That's it, like that. Okay, same thing with a carrot. As long as the ends are kind of clean and I brushed it off, I'm okay. What I'll do here is I'll cut that guy in half, and all I'm trying to do is expose it so that I can get the flavors out of it. Okay, and a lot of people wonder, oh, you're throwing away this vegetable, and what a waste, and the whole thing. But if you actually taste it after it's been put into a stock, you'll start to notice that there isn't much flavor left in those because it's all now in the liquid. Same thing with the onion. I'm just going to cut that, and take that out like that. Same thing with this back part here. I'm just cutting chunks. Okay, and that's what I want to use for my stock. Garlic, same thing. I'm just going to keep the shells on them. As long as they're not dirty and they've been brushed off and cleaned, you're good to go. All right, and that's that. If the carcasses that I'm using are way too big, I could run a knife through and just kind of break those up, but I don't think we're going to need that today. Okay, you're going to want a decent sized stock pot, and you want to make sure that there's enough room there that, you know, your materials should cover, you know, a third here. So you want something that's going to be big enough to hold that. You want that water, once we put it in, to sort of cover all the bones and all the vegetables. It should be submerged. You shouldn't have bones and things sticking out. There's just not enough liquid in there. So we're going to start preparing this. So there's nothing in here right now. I'm just going to throw in all these vegetables. There we go. I'm going to put my carcass in there as well. In there, I'm going to add peppercorns. I've got about 15 here. You don't have to measure, but you know, about a tablespoon maybe. Throw those in there. I'm going to put 3 bay leaves in there. Here's some other materials that were sitting around. And when it comes to the flavoring element from herbs and such, there are a couple of options. One, you can just toss them in there. But depending on what you're going to use it after, if you don't strain it out, you may get little bits of herbs and things that show up. So if you don't want that, you could wrap those herbs in a little bag, okay, and that bag would be made out of cheesecloth, and you could throw the little bag in there. You just tie it off, and then at the end, pull it out. The other way that you could do that, and we call this a fagot, and what we would do is tie that with string and just throw it in there, and then we could pull it out. I really don't care about that, so I'm just going to toss it in there. And we're just going to do that. I'm going to add about a good tablespoon of salt. Okay, just to get those flavors going. Salt draws out moisture and will help to start seasoning the stock. You don't want to put a ton in there yet, but you want to start that process and getting those flavors going. So now what I'm going to do, so if you see it now, okay, you can see it's pretty full there. But I'm going to top that up with nice cold water. Beautiful. So now once everything's topped with cold water, and I'm going above where the bones are and the vegetables, and I want to make sure that it's nice and covered. I'm going to put that onto the stove, and I'm going to try to bring it to the boil as quick as I can. So I'm going high heat to begin with, but I'm keeping an eye. I'm not leaving and going for a run. I need to make sure I keep an eye on that. It's going to start to steam, and then as it starts to reach the boil, all the impurities, so all the proteins that are in the bones and in the vegetables, will start to float to the top as they coagulate, and we call that scum. And really, you'll recognize it because it looks like scum. It's like this foamy, gray nastiness, and what we want to do is scoop that out and remove it as it starts to come up. Once we reach the boil, we don't want this stock boiling like crazy. We want to make sure that we drop that temperature and just get a nice simmer. We want to massage those flavors out. Okay, so I'm going to put that on there. And I'm turning it up to high. And basically what we're doing is creating our own this. Although what we're making is way better than this stuff. Okay, so this stuff in a pinch and you need some chicken stock, you could absolutely use this, but it's better to make your own. The flavorings that are in there, the lack of chemicals that are in the stuff that we're making, it just makes up for it. And when you're feeling a little under the weather and you make a nice soup with some real stock, there's a real difference there, and it's good for the body, and you can feel the body sort of get nourished. So I'm going to bring that up to the boil, and then I'm going to show you sort of what it looks like. I'll try to show you some of the descumming. And I want you to keep in mind that I'm not going to show you the video, in 2 hours or whatever, but you would strain that You strain out the bones and all that sort of stuff. Keep the liquid in a container, let it cool, then get it into the fridge, and then the next day you can remove the fat on there if there is any. If there is a good layer of fat, it actually helps to preserve it quite nicely in the fridge. You still want to wrap it in plastic, make sure nothing falls in there or that it doesn't fall out on other things. And as long as that layer of fat is in there and keeping things in there, you'll see that it can actually extend the life of that stock. So it's nice when you can do that. Okay, so we'll see you in a few minutes when I can bring it up to the boil and show you how to get down to the simmer, and we'll take it from there. See you soon. All right, you can see that it's starting to come up to the boil, and as that happens, you can start to see it starts to get a little cloudy. So this is what I was talking about with a white stock. It's a little bit more cloudy and a little bit milder in flavor, but these are the proteins, okay? So basically blood and stuff like that from the bones, and proteins within the vegetables as well that sort of come up. Any impurities will come up as a scum. So I'll show you the scum in a couple of minutes, but that's the beginning part of that. Okay, so I'm gonna hold you from the left hand here. So what we've got happening here, it's coming up to the boil. So what I wanna do is I'm gonna drop that down, and I wanna make sure I get down to a simmer. And when I do that, you're also going to notice all this scum. So what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna scoop up this scum like that. Okay, so these are just impurities, okay? Blood that's been cooked out, things like that. Now you don't get this kind of thing if you roast them first. So if you were to make a brown stock where you roast all the bones and all the materials first, you won't get that issue. So you'll see that when I do the beef stock, that won't be there quite as much anyways. There'll be a little bit from the vegetables still, but that's basically it. I'm going to continue this process, and I'm going to stop this video here. I think I changed my mind. I think I'm going to give you guys a part 2 of when I strain it, just so that you can see how to do that safely. And we'll take it from there. So we'll see you on part 2.